What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Liquid here on the YouTube station where we paint things and we try to make them not look like junk. On this episode, we're going to be doing Lara Croft, sculpted by the wonderful Abe 3D. But before we get into it, let's play a little game real quick. Let's play What Did Liquid Not Film This Week? Will it be A, the flowers on the tree, B, weathering on the boots, or C, the whole damn head? Let me know down in the comments below which part of the model you think I forgot to film. While you're down there, you might as well go ahead and maybe click the subscribe button if you've not done so already. Maybe click a like. It really helps the algorithm out a whole lot. But before we start getting too deep into this, I want to show you some really cool stuff that my patrons have painted for me to show to you. We really do have an awesome group of dudes over there on Patreon, seriously, and some seriously talented guys too. We need more. We need more dudes and gals like them. If you're interested in possibly joining the Patreon page, I will put a link down in the description below. Also, don't forget, we're giving away the airbrush next week over on the Patreon. Coupon code will be down there for 50% off the first month of any tier of your choice. Let's go ahead and start painting a base. It's dirt. We've seen people paint dirt before. We know how to paint dirt, so we're literally just going to be dry brushing in sequence our darker colors up to our lighter colors. And then I did use a little bit of a lighter color on the side to go around where those little, I can't remember what those little symbols are called. There's a word for them. If you know, make sure to tell me. But yeah, we just dry brushed some brown all over the base relatively simply. And then once I was satisfied with the level of dry brushing that we had achieved, I grabbed some Agrex Earthshade and I went ahead and sprayed some of that into the shadowed areas around under where her feet would be, maybe some in the little bundles of rocks there, just to add a little bit more depth to the base. And then once we've got that done, we're ready to start moving on to some other elements that are on this base. And there are a few rocks and there's a little bit of foliage, a little bit of green, so we're going to give them the same dry brush treatment that everybody else got. After we put down a nice little dry brush coating of the moon gray on, I wanted to grab this rock gray, because what better color to use to paint rocks than a paint that literally has the word rock in the name of the color, even though it's green. I don't think this is a gray. Maybe it's a gray green. It's a really good color, and I don't think I've ever used it to paint rocks before, but we're doing it today because science. And now moving on to the other leaves that are on this base, which, don't ask, there was the thought that you would even think that there's other leaves that were supposed to be on here that I accidentally broke off and didn't glue back on is preposterous. Don't even insinuate that I would do something like that. But I painted the ones that are here with a dark green, and then I went over with this lighter green, and I kind of dry brushed over top of the leaves to try to bring out some of the details, you know, get some edge highlighting just to make it pop just a little bit more. And then I just, because I felt like trying something stupid, grabbed an even lighter green, and then I ended up actually brushing some weird highlight parts onto that with the brush, and it just kind of ended up looking weird. So then I took the other color and I dry brushed more green over top of it, and I called it a day on the leaves. Moving on to what they're calling a tree. It's a very, very small tree, if it is indeed a tree, but we're going to give it roughly the same treatment that the rest of the base got, with a whole boatload of brown dry brushing. And here recently, I have been liking grabbing a few flesh colors for some dirt and some brown and dry brushed aspect. I mean, because all skin tones, by and large, are just a different shade of brown, or in this case, the shade of reddish brown. But experiment. Use some odd colors in some places that you didn't think it would work. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? You got to back up and redo it anyway. Who cares? No one cares. Have fun. These are your models. Paint them the way you want to paint them. And I did want to grab a few different browns to go across this little vine thing that is growing its way around the tree, just to add some differentiation. That way it doesn't look like it's literally all the same exact type of tree. Then I reached over and grabbed some deck gray or deck tan, whichever flavor you have on hand, and I just gently dry brushed a little bit on some of these mushrooms that are sticking out of the side of this tree. And then there's also some little teeny tiny little flowers, a little pop of color, which I did dry brush in preparation for giving them a nice treatment of contrast paint. And the leaves here that are on this tree, they were done the exact same way as the leaves that I did that were on the base. And then here we are with our trio of contrast paints. I just grabbed 3 colors that were relatively different in tonality. So I grabbed a blue, a orange, and a dark red / burgundy, whatever you want to call it. And I literally just painted over top of them. This is literally what contrast paints are for, to paint over a zenithal or highlighted in some way part, and the contrast paint will settle in the cracks, and it will get darker in the crevices, and it'll stay lighter in the highlight parts. That's literally what contrast paints are for, so I actually used them what they're made to be used for. And then I also grabbed a little bit of a yellow contrast paint to do the middle parts of the flowers. I can't remember what that's called because I haven't taken elementary science class in a very, very long time. And then coming back to the base, we are going to go ahead and finish it up with my personal preference of a gold replacement, which is the Ionic Brass. Great color, and I use that just to go ahead and do the gold trimming that is going around the entirety of this base. And now jumping back over into the booth with the snakebite leather, which is also just a really super awesome, easy to use color. We're going to go ahead and paint the quiver of arrows that she has propped up against this tree that we just painted, that are going to also be sitting on the base. So we're going to use the snakebite leather to give a nice coating to the whole thing, and then we're going to use a Cygor brown to go ahead and paint some of the leather or plasticky, whatever fabric this is, accents that are on the quiver. And then once we were done with that, we grabbed some more of our brass and we went ahead and painted the buckles and the little metal accents that were on the strap of the quiver. And simply for no other reason than there was no way in hell that I was going to paint every single one of these little arrows. I just grabbed a warm gray color and I just dry brushed the end of them. I mean, that's good enough. This is a part of the base, right? It's not even the main part of the model. Not everything has to be 100%, painted to the best of its ability. I mean, you can if you want to. It's your life and it's your time. You do what you want to do, but I wasn't about to do that. Anyway, going back into the booth, we are now ready to start painting Miss Lara Croft. We're using a little bit of a wider camera angle here, as you can see, because I did go ahead and use some sticky tack, and I put some of the pieces together because that made more sense to get more uniform shading. So it's a little bit wider. I don't know if it works, if you like it. If you don't like it, let me know down below. Should I do this more often? Should I never do it again? Does it really matter? Does anyone give a shit? Does anyone even care what I say? What's the point of the universe? How many stars are in the sky? Tonight, particularly. Anyway, we painted her pants with a nice gray color, and I wasn't very happy with that because she's wearing it's not like a denim, but they look I guess maybe like a gray denim pants. So I grabbed this Griff Charger gray, and I initially was just going to spray it into the shadows, but I really liked the tone that it was giving to the rest of the gray. So I did also go ahead and use this gray to tint down all of her pants, obviously spraying more into the shadows because that was the point to begin with. And now we're going to go ahead and start painting her bandages. I don't know if you know, but if you don't know, I'm about to learn you something really cool and really easy. Lots of models have bandages, real dirty, nasty bandage. The recipe for a nasty bandage is literally deck tan and skeleton horde. And that's it. You can do more to it, which we're going to do more to it. But that's it. Deck tan and skeleton horde painted on with a brush equals dirty, nasty bandage. And I'm about to prove that here in just a very few short minutes. But first, we got to paint the boots because she's wearing some, and we're going to use Cygor Brown for that. And here we are back with the skeleton horde, which I'm almost out of, and I need to get another bottle of relatively soon because it's one of those colors you have to have it. It does so many things, and it is the color of so many things, but a horde of skeletons, I cannot vouch for that. But it does do a really good job on these dirty bandages, so that's what I used it for. And then, of course, the straps. What model would be complete without 45 straps on it? Actually, this one's not too bad. But it's some of those weird grooved straps. You guys know what I mean? Like, it's not like the smooth, like a belt, like her belt there. It's some of those, like, you know, the tactical nylon with the grooves that are a bitch to paint sometimes. And, like, your brush wants to bounce on the ridges and jump off and touch the model and piss you off and ruin your whole weekend. Yeah, it's got a few of those on it. So just be real careful and make sure your paint is really thinned down. Once we got that done, I did grab some metal, a different metal, the Kaleido brand of metal, and I painted some of the accents on her belts, just making sure to keep as much of it out of camera focus as possible. And now we're going to grab some Flesh Tear's Red Contrast Paint, which is a great blood color. This and I think there's another one called Blood for the Blood God, which I don't have, but those are just really good blood colors. I wanted to not do, I mean, obviously if you just paint blotches of red on there, it's not going to look that great. So I grabbed the Beauty Blender sponge. Any sponge will work. You could use paper towels. It really doesn't matter, but I just grabbed this torn piece of a Beauty Blender sponge, and I put a thick dab on there and tried to make it look as organic as possible, and then I just start dabbing it back off. That way we're just kind of staining the surface. We're not really painting it. And then I start doing the exact same thing with her boots, which is the reason that I didn't really do a whole lot of detail on her boots, because we're going to grab just some yellows, some browns, some brownish yellows, whatever color you want to use. It literally doesn't matter when you're wanting to make something look nasty. I did make sure though, however, on these colors specifically, to make sure they were watered down, and keep in mind, the longer you let it sit there, the more staining it's gonna do. So, you know, it's best to do this in layers and just kind of build it up, as opposed to just slapping straight paint on there and then not being able to get it off, because you're gonna ruin your model if you do that. I did also want to go ahead and take this same process and put some of that onto her pantalones. And this is by no way the most realistic, or probably the most effective way to do weathering, but it's an easy way and it gets the job done, right? Most models don't call for it, but when they do, it really lets you kind of half-ass some things, because you know you're just going to be smudging it up with random colors anyway. It's pretty cool. But it does add to the feel and the environment of certain models, this being one of those models where it just made a whole lot of sense to try to weather her pants down some. And we're ready to go ahead and take her legs and her hips and go ahead and plug them into the base and move on. And now it's time for everybody's favorite process, skin tones. I did kind of keep it more traditional with the kind of skin tone that I'm sure you're used to seeing people on the internet paint that way, because it just works. You're going to use a magenta or a pink or a color of that variety, and you're going to want to go ahead and put that down over top of all your highlighted areas that you're going to want to be the most vibrant, and you're going to let some of that paint show through, and you'll see that as we proceed along. Also, this model has some, how should we say, emphasized assets, which leads me to recently, I don't know if you've noticed that some of my models look a little cleaner, and also we're spraying some red ink into the shadows here, because that helps also to darken the skin tones where they need to be a little darker. But I use I finally broke down and actually forced myself to start learning to use lychee slicer, and it is so much better. And they've got this new thing that allows models like Miss Lara Croft's upper torso to be printed in a way that will basically alleviate all suction cups, and I may do a video on that in the future. If you guys are, for some crazy ass reason, curious on how I slice my models, let me know, and we may put that in the works for the future. Anyway, moving on, we're just going to use some of our ionic skin tones. We got 2 or 3, 4 sets of skin tones. We just grabbed some random stuff, you know. Grab a darker one, a medium tone one, and a lighter one, and just start painting. So we're going to go ahead in light coats now, because you don't want to cover up all that beautiful pink and red that you spent so much time and effort putting down. Gently start building up the skin tones until you get a smooth, clean finish with some of that pink and red showing through as the undertone. And now we're going to grab our gnome skin, which is still a pretty bright skin tone, but we're going to use this as our mid-tone and go ahead and start building up our highlights, and just kind of, this is where the zenithal comes into play. You do the zenithal because it will give you an idea of where your highlights should be falling and kind of the volumes of the model that you're working with in particular. So we're going to go ahead and hitting her with some highlights, because that's what I'm doing. And then we're going to grab elf skin, which is the brightest of bright highlights, and go ahead and hit like the tops of the shoulders, the top of her chest area, the forehead, the parts that you would imagine would be the brightest. And now we're going to use some of our DIY Orcish Dermis. Shout out to The Ground Affected. That's where I saw this particular concoction be made up. I know there's another video out there by the one I think it's the Australian guy. Super awesome video. If I wasn't so lazy, I would make a big batch of the Orcus dermis using the recipe that he used, because it really is a great color. But if you've got this color, use like a reddish pink skin tone with some red ink in it, red ink specifically. It's going to give you a nice warm color that will bring some saturation and some life back into your model, so it's not just a flat white at the end of the day. It really is great for bringing out, you know, just some more warmth and some more natural tones. Moving on, she has a pickaxe that is hanging on the side of her. This is, I guess, like an ice climbing pickaxe, and that thing is going to be gloss red. We don't use a whole lot of gloss colors, but when you need them, it's super nice to have them, to just grab them and throw them down like these Kaleidos, and they just cover so well. And moving on to the shirt portion here, on the model itself, in the render, her shirt was kind of like a darker gray, almost like just a darker version of the same color that her pants were. But I wanted to do throwback Lara Croft. I wanted to do, OG, because I'm that guy, and I used to play video games all the time. We're talking like PS1 Lara Croft, and we had to throw down the bright blue ass shirt on her. And this part is always so scary because you've spent so much time getting your skin tones just perfect, and you've got them just great, and now you've got to take a brush and get as close as possible to those skin tones as humanly possible without actually touching them. Yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking, but now we've got another one of those bandages that's going to get the same exact treatment as the other previous bandages. And I glued a few parts of this model. That right there, her arm actually broke. The key broke when I was getting everything cleaned up and prepped for the video. So I just went ahead and glued it in place because it doesn't matter and nobody cares. On her other arm, she's got this little weird string band tied around her arm for some odd reason. And then she also has like a wrist band, and I just used some Sigor Brown to paint those. And I did grab some silver here to go ahead and paint her necklace. Her necklace, actually the medallion itself was a green color, but I didn't like that, so I didn't paint it green. I just painted the whole thing silver because I want to. Fight me if you have a problem with it. And then in her left hand, she's holding a bow, which doesn't actually have a string as a part of the model. I don't know if what I'm about to do was the intended pathway to it, but it is really freaking cool. Anytime you can use something, other than paint to complete a part of a model, it's pretty badass. So I just took a little cheap piece of, twine from Walmart or whatever, like $1, and I just cut off a little section of it, and the bow, it's got these little notches, and when you tie the knot around the end of it, it acts as a little bit of flex, which is super badass because it puts a little bit of tension on the rope, kind of like a real bow, huh? Anyway, her other hand is holding a gun, so I did go ahead and paint the bandages that she has on the gun hand. And also, I don't know why people, I'm not saying that it doesn't look cool or that it's not right, because however you want to paint it is the right way. Who am I to judge, right? But a lot of people want to paint their guns silver, right? They'll paint the whole thing silver, and then, they'll paint the whole thing black, and then they'll dry brush silver. And I don't know if these are people that have never seen a gun, but do me a favor and just Google Glock, which is very similar to what she's holding, or a SIG. This is more like a SIG Sauer. Google Glock and SIG, and tell me how many silver Glocks and SIGs you find. Just let me know. I like to paint my guns black because most guns I've seen are black, so I'm going to paint them black. And then I'm not gonna lie, I started getting really crunched for time because I wasn't able to paint on Saturday. So that means I'm doing all of this on Sunday. And then it got to be Sunday night. And then I have to go to work to do my real actual job that pays me money and allows me to have internet to do these videos on Monday. So I was getting really crunched for time. So we're just gonna speed run some of these details. Literally, I'm not even cutting. Look at that shit, how fast it was. I put down some silver over top of the pickaxe. And then I put down some yellow over top of the deck tan that I put on her little radio. And then we're going to grab our little Flesh Terrors red, and we're going to add some more little blood splatters onto her. Still not cutting. And then we're going to take this Talisar blue contrast paint, and we're going to go ahead and put in some shadows on her shirt, just to add a little bit more depth so it's not just a flat blue. Sometimes, I mean, it's nice to have a highlight and a shadow on everything if you can, but sometimes just a shadow helps. And that is it. So if you guessed I forgot to paint the whole ass head, you win. I'm sorry. I'm not good at being a YouTube person.
Ay, I don't walk in the room, I just run the whole floor. I got artifacts and gold, and I'm coming back for more. Got the manor in the back, got the shooters on the payroll. I'm a cold-blooded bitch, yeah, I do what I say. So check the blood on the boots, yeah, I'm deep in the shit. I'm taking what I want, ain't slowing down, will never quit. You're a broke-ass hater, you're a local-ass fraud. I'm a global-ass account, I'm a motherfucking god. I take it.
Well, at least the head is here where it matters the most at the end of the video, right? And also, yes, her hair is screwed up because I printed it twice and there was a massive gap between them. So I grabbed some UV putty and I tried to sculpt some hair, and that just turned into a horrible mess, which fortunately for you, you don't have to endure. But before I ramble way too much more, I want to go ahead and give a big old shout out to my patrons. You guys are awesome. Thank you so very much for supporting the channel. I look forward to giving you guys a airbrush, one of you guys, an airbrush at the end of this month. Anyway, I'm sorry I didn't paint the whole head, and that sucks because her face actually looks really good on this model. This is Lara Croft. I will see you again next Wednesday. Peace.
Mud on the face, mud on the lace. I'm winning the race.